I don't think there's any guarantees with taking lessons. I don't think there's any guarantees with doing really anything in golf. But I've yet to see somebody go through 6 to 8 weeks of speed training, not come out the other side a better golfer.
And what you end up finding is that when you coach that full picture of the golf swing like that, all of those little pieces that you could identify as being inefficiencies over the course, all of them tend to get better at the same time without having to really talk about any of them specifically.
Okay, guys, and welcome back to episode 7 of the Golf Asylum Podcast. This week, we have two fantastic guests, some knowledge and sort of insights on the world of speed acquisition. You guys know that I've been on this journey for getting more clubhead speed, really, to be honest, for probably the last 15 years. But over the last 5 years, I've actually been fairly successful in doing so. And I would say that success really coincided with me learning about SuperSpeed Golf and learning what it takes from the SuperSpeed Golf program to swing the golf club faster and take that from the club fitting bay or the indoor environment out onto the golf course. And we have two phenomenal guests who we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. We have Mike Napoleon and Tyler Standifird from SuperSpeed Golf. How are you, boys?
Doing great, Ian. Good to see you. Always a pleasure, talking shop here about the world of speed training with you. And, again, helping you out with your own game's been a blast too for us. So hope it's all been going well and you're getting ready for season here.
We are getting ready for season, Mike, and starting to ramp things up, which is a lot of fun. You two have been real leaders in this space for quite some time. And, obviously, Mike, with yourself and sort of developing the SuperSpeed company and programs and bringing on, obviously, Tyler. Tyler, your research that you've done in the space has been absolutely incredible and industry leading. Let's dive into that in itself. Mike, what, as a golf instructor, a number of years ago, what was about sort of club head speed or speed acquisition that sort of made you take this path?
I think it's a pretty simple answer. Nobody that walks through the door in any golf academy in the world asks you to make them slower, asks you to help them hit it shorter. Everybody can benefit and wants to benefit from, hitting the golf ball further. I just always felt like that question was not answered in enough detail. It wasn't answered deeply enough. And there was just a lot of bad information out there about the positives and negatives of getting into speed training programs and the right way to do it. So, we just decided to kind of dive off that cliff and look at every possible aspect that affects how far people hit the golf ball and help them get better.
And Tyler, when did sort of golf and club head speed, when did that become part of your research journey?
Yeah, it's a good question. I actually, again, probably like many of us in the golf industry, we love golf as players ourselves. And so really I think it's maybe been 4 or 5 years that some super speed stuff started popping up on my social media feeds. The algorithms must have known that I was the shortest hitter in my group. And so for me, it really was, hey, what can I do for myself? Just similar to you, right, Ian? What can I do for myself to gain speed? Reached out to SuperSpeed and kind of through that process, obviously I myself have gained speed, but then that's opened up ideas to me to dive into the details of why are people gaining speed? How are they gaining speed? And ultimately, how can we make the system more efficient, better at gaining speed, and kind of how can we take the next steps to help golfers get the most? And so for the past kind of 3-4 years, I've turned the lab into a cool mecca of golf science that just really steamrolls study after study.
Yeah, and for a little context for those of you who don't know, I visited Tyler's lab in Utah Valley University. When would that have been? Was that 18 months ago?
Yeah, I think it's been about a year and a half to 2 years. Yeah,
September, maybe it's 23. And as a research geek myself, just could not believe the resources you have there. It was the first time I had been on smart to move plates. It was the first time I had used sensor edge, grip technology. Obviously your Qualisys motion capture machine. It's an incredible lab that you've got built there. And, you guys gave me the full experience, the full treatment. Mike, you put me through the program and sort of gave me the tools and built that custom program, which was the early days of the app, which we will get into talking about today. But that was really an incredible experience for me to get that sort of firsthand. Mike, going again back to the coaching days, and sort of the evolution to where we are today. How has coaching in this regard failed golfers with some of our anecdotal advice, like slow your swing down? You need to slow things down. You need to sort of, get sort of, comfortable hitting the ball solid before you get fast. How has that mindset really done a 180 over the last number of years?
Yeah, I think that mindset's, completely backwards, honestly. I would say that the more contemporary, modern, theory of how to help players get better at golf is to create athletes and then help those athletes get better at golf. I started looking at this really deeply when we started getting into a lot of research on junior development, how to develop athletes in different sports. And a lot of the things that you started to see there were just not what was going on out in the world of junior golf coaching. You had programs where coaches were standing over the kids and helping them with their grip or helping them with positions of the swing. And then you started to look at other sports where you're creating much more high performing athletes and they're running fast and jumping high and throwing hard and playing 4 different sports at the same time. So we started to mirror our junior golf programs over after that type of a process. And we started to see incredible results with how much fun the kids were having, how much they wanted to come to their golf class. And so that changed the world. And then all of a sudden we started looking and saying, well, why aren't we doing this with the same kind of thing with adults? Why does this not apply? So we started to apply some of those same things to our programs with adults. And all of a sudden they started getting better a lot faster. And then I think it was just more of a fine tuning and a specialization of saying, okay, we need to look at this, on a more specific level. Here's a goal that players have, which is hitting the ball further. How do we make that fun? How do we make it easy? And then how do we create a program that takes a lot of the science-based data parts of this and puts it into an incredibly simple to follow, organized program so people can actually get better? Because that I'd say is one of the other big detriments that I'd say sometimes it falls into that realm in golf coaching is there's a lot of great coaches out there that know what they want the player to do. The next level of coaches have some idea then, kind of what type of a process or program to give to that program to get them to do it. And I think the highest level coaches take all of that analysis, all of that detail, all of that data, and then hand the person a very specific set of drills that are going to help them get the result. Maybe not even with having explained all of the detail of how it works to them, but just giving them that very simple process that's going to help them to get to that end result. And that's what we have, spent years now trying to create with the SuperSpeed programs, which is for basically anyone that picks it up. Here's a very specific and simple process to go from point A to point B in helping you improve speed and power in your golf swing.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I wanted to go next, Mike, was how does someone embark on this journey, right? You've got the desire, you've got a little bit of inspiration from wherever it is, from whether it's a coach or a friend that's maybe got you by a few too many yards. Tyler, like you said, nobody wants to be that shortest player in the group. And to be honest, that was it for me. That was exactly the same thing. I was always surrounded by great golfers. And I was an okay golfer, but proportionately, I didn't hit the golf ball far enough, and my skills in the other parts of the game were not good enough to close the gap. So to me, the opportunity was always through speed to sort of close that gap. And my own journey of, I think probably about 6 or 7 years ago, no, maybe a little longer, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I was 100-mile-an-hour clubhead speed guy with the driver, and I could never break that barrier. It was like I just had a ceiling right above me, and I just could never, ever break through it. And, it wasn't until I found the system that I was able to sort of break through that and become a 105 guy and a 108 guy. And eventually, I think I ended up, topping out about 123, 124 in 2021. But, how does someone start upon that journey?
Yeah, I can take this one too, Tyler. I again, that's been a major goal of what we've tried to do. Like, we want that to be accessible to everybody. I mean, back when I was running my golf academy, I mean, every single player went through about a 3-hour assessment. We looked at every detail of how that player's body moved, all the biomechanics, all the, everything. We looked at everything similar to what we did with you when you were out at Tyler's lab. Like, we looked at all those details. What has become a lot more elegant and efficient over the years is that we've found some very common things that are kind of low-hanging fruit for nearly everyone. That process is still the most effective. Like, if you want to go in and get the full, process of all of those details, you can build out the most specific program possible. But, again, what we've tried to do now is we've tried to make that type of a thing accessible to everybody that may not have time to, take 3 golf lessons a week and 4 training sessions and do the same type of things that PGA Tour players can do. If you can do that, great. But, what we've really tried to put together now, with the SuperSpeed app is a portal and a platform where any player can go in. They can get some good data about how their body moves. There's a full physical screen in there. They can get data about where they are right now from a baseline standpoint on speed. There's speed assessments in there. And, with that data, we're able to start to put together a very complete speed and power program that's also going to have very positive impact on mechanics and all the other things that go into this. We knew very early on starting SuperSpeed that anybody picked up our system and went through some very simple drills was going to gain some clubhead speed. And, now with Tyler, we know that on average, they're going to gain about 5.2% clubhead speed over this amount of time. And, it's very detailed in the research. What we always started to look at too, though, is that, that next 5% that they still wanted was a little harder to get to. And that involved, now we got to look at some of those things on the physical side. We've got to look at things on the mechanics side. We got to look at things on how they're delivering the club to the ball. We have to look at, even, potentially look at some club fitting aspects, because those things are going to make a huge difference in how far that ball flies once you've gained 6-7 miles an hour of clubhead speed. So we've really tried to integrate that into a very easy to follow system in the app, where the player on their own can do those things, obviously on a much more simple level than, we're going to have with hundreds of thousands of dollars of analysis equipment in a lab. But what we're finding is that the results that you can get from that program, we're getting 95% of the way there in building a very similar program for people as we would with having all of that data on the research side as well. So that's been very cool. Starting to see the results. We already have thousands of subscribers on this app. Like, it's already getting there where people are using it, and the more it gets out there and the more people see how much they're able to do, with and getting some of that, more personalized assessment in there. I think it's going to be a really big thing, and it's going to help a lot of people really round out what they're doing from a speed training perspective.
I think that's a great thing for people, an encouraging thing as well for people to realize, is that having access to Tyler is not realistic for every golfer out there, right? I mean, as credible as that would be to have someone with his knowledge and expertise sort of behind you and helping you sort of with your speed, you can get to 90% of the way, 95% of the way with the app, with some, some effort, some intent. And maybe, yeah, to get to the next frontier, you might have to start sort of uncovering some more niche areas of sort of how you go about some of the technical elements of it. But just go do it. Just start it. Start day 1 and then find yourself day 2 and 3 and beyond, right? But you don't have to have a lab like Tyler's or TPI or one of these incredible facilities behind you for this to be possible.
I mean, at our facility, we charged, tens of thousands of dollars a year for people to be members of that program. Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, like, we're building out almost the same program for people, at least on the speed and power side, for people through the app, all, digitally now. It's like we've tried to digitize that whole experience into something that's easily accessible, for $10 a month. So like, I really feel like when people get into this and start to see how much content's in there, how much, personalized training program they can get, for what we've built into this app, I think people, once they see it, it's kind of a new frontier for us for sure on the golf coaching side.
And I'll just add, Ian, you brought up this point of like just kind of starting at day one and then progressing to day two. Again, my background is in exercise science, right? All my education is there, and we have the same battle with any kind of physical training, whether you're trying to do it for weight loss or general health or gaining muscle. Sometimes I think people have this idea of, well, I have to have this highly specialized program, this trainer that walks me through everything, and I have to be given an hour and a half, 6 days a week to have any kind of benefit. And man, it's not the case in general physical training, and it's for sure not the case in golf training, where a little bit goes a long, long way. And I think your number of being able to capture maybe 90% of these gains, 95% of the gains with these drills, these assessments, this personalized prescription of some exercise plans and some drills and some mechanics pieces. I just can't stress enough how much that will do to begin with. And then, like you said, Ian, these people might have this great experience and say, well, man, I want that final 10%. And yeah, that is where you're going to need to find a place that maybe has the capacity to really dial in those things. But that 90% is there to gain with some simplistic exercise programs and protocols that you can kind of chip away at, 20, 30 minutes a day, 4 or 5 times a week.
I remember seeing an Instagram post of, it was an indoor, it might be a sports hall or something like that. It was in Scandinavia, and it was just a group of maybe 8 to 10 kids, and they didn't have hitting bays. They didn't have, they didn't really have golf clubs. They were just lined up sequentially, and they all kind of had their station, and they had SuperSpeed sticks, and they were just in a class for creating speed. And that was what they were there to do for that period of time. And, then there would be a rotation. The next group would come in, and you kind of see it in parts of Asia as well, similar types of things where they do certain, speed training. And I remember that really was a eureka moment, or a kind of a light bulb moment for me, where I thought, this is the future of our game. This is the way, people will train. We'll turn up and we'll have these speed classes, if you like, and it'll become like your golf gym, and this maintenance in your game will come, through speed. And then when you're at the golf course, you refine all the other parts, but the motor patterns and the sequencing of your golf swing can really all be done in this sort of speed training environment. And I remember thinking to myself, that's it. That's the future of the game. People are going to be opening up speed, sort of, super speed golf studios, or sort of studios to gain speed. That is the future of our game.
Yeah, Ian, I call it reverse engineered coaching. I think it is, a big time future of how things are going to go. I think for a long, long time, coaches have spent more time breaking down the swing into small pieces and working on those small pieces and then trying to build it back into a whole. The future of this is taking the entire process, making it more athletic, making it more efficient. And what you end up finding is that when you coach that full picture of the golf swing like that, all of those little pieces that you could identify as being inefficiencies over the course, all of them tend to get better at the same time without having to really talk about any of them specifically. And that's a big deal. That's a, very forward thinking way of doing this, but it's actually what most other sports do when they coach elite athletes. You don't see a Major League Baseball player in the cage taking a quarter swing at a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. They might be trying to integrate some type of new movement pattern or some type of drill, but what they're doing tends to work the entire athletic motion of that movement. It's the same thing if you deal with any other sport pretty much on the planet. So that's where it is. I think we stumbled upon some of that, and then we started to see the results of it, and we are certainly all in on that type of a plan at this point.
I think one of the things that we had our first call, we had a call before this, but we had a call. was during COVID times with our whole TXG team, Mike, and yourself. I think it was yourself and Kyle jumped on with us, and we had all of our club fitters on a call with you learning about SuperSpeed. And the reason I wanted to do that back then was people always have that question of, well, what happens? You're going to fit me to a golf club. What happens if I gain some speed? Is that club still going to fit me? And it became something that was very apparent to me that we probably want to explore what the limit or so what the potential output of this player could be. So we kept a set of super speeds in every single fitting bay, and that we would go through that process, but we'd also integrate a little bit of speed training into the process just to see, okay, you're at 92 miles an hour, but with a little effort and intent, can you be 100? Is that quite achievable for you? And it would obviously stack onto the gains of the fitting itself, because for every mile an hour of clubhead speed we gain, we have that potential of 2.7 yards additional. And that's before we start to optimize the ball speed, the launch angle, and the spin rate. But I wanted to see what was left on the table for the golfer that we could extract during that session. And that was one of the most eye-opening things for me, and one of the coolest things I think that we implemented to our club fitting process at TXG.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the whole, right? Like, I look at it as a really kind of four-pillared approach to helping people get speed. And, all of the, we call it impact physics, but all of the stuff that you're dealing with to optimize in club fitting is a major piece of that puzzle. I just think that, the mechanical elements are a big piece, the physical component's a big piece, and then what that player's doing as far as, like, we call it the neurological side, but basically that whole computerized system, like how is your brain controlling your body, which is what we really look at in overspeed, is another big component. But yes, I mean, all four of those need to be optimized to get the most out of every player. And every single player is using all four of those categories to some level of efficiency in their current game. So that's just kind of what we're trying to do. We're trying to assess those things, build programs for those to make them more effective, more efficient for every player. And, you're going to see that in all those aspects when you start that process in the app.
It's a cool, Ian. It's a cool thought. Obviously, we don't want people to have to always buy new clubs as a part of their super speed process, but we're also okay with the fact that if a player gains, 8 to 10 miles per hour of swing speed, that might necessitate a different club. You bring up a really good point that I think, obviously you as an experienced fitter, because I hear that almost, Ian, and think not just seeing what their potential limits are, but also, hey, here's this driver that we know works really well at 94. If you're going to embark upon a speed training plan, hey, it actually would work still really, really well for you at 101. And maybe that's the kind of thing that might, I don't know, hold some players back. They've recently been fit, really high level fit for a club. And if we know that they can gain X amount and still be in an appropriate driver for them, and I remember you and I had a conversation about this at my lab, that can be a powerful way to say, have at it, because that first 5%, you're probably going to be A-okay. It's that next 5% that when you jump 10, 15 miles an hour, now we really need to start looking at that.
I actually used to say to people, Tyler, if you gain enough speed that you come back here and we retest your driver and you've outgrown your driver, I'll replace the shaft for free as an incentive. No problem. We'll always find a home for that old shaft. That's no problem at all. Shafts are not they don't evolve like club heads where, if you need to replace it in a year or so, then it's sort of like, out of sort of line. So I always said that to people. If you come back to me and you've went from 94 to 108, I'll give you the X-Flex. No problem. That's on me. What an incentive, right?
Yeah, cool. I mean, I feel like there's some work there too on just the developmental fitting side too. Like if you're standing in front of a player that's going to be starting a speed program, you may be looking at that, and even if there's a driver that may give them an extra 2 yards over another one that day, but that one that's 2 yards shorter is going to promote, that little bit more aggressive transition. It's going to promote some of the things that they're going to be working on in their other program. I think it's a big deal with club fitting, like knowing what that player's going to be doing and how they're going to be working on things, makes a big difference in potentially what you're going to be recommending to that player in that fitting that day. It doesn't always have to be the one that, you just happen to square up and hit the ball 3 yards further, with that moment? What's the one that's going to work with you over the next 3 months, 2 years, whatever it might be, to really optimize the game and support those other goals?
Without a doubt. Tyler, what has the research in the lab shown you? For people listening, they'll want to know. You've got this incredible equipment and you do research studies all the time. Maybe pick out, if you could, a couple of the real sort of highlights that people would love to know in your discoveries.
Yeah, I think the first one, Ian, came from a couple of my early studies. That I think at the time I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. And I think now after 4 or 5 years, I'm like, wow, that's really great. Where if I do an assessment on a player, and even we think about your assessment, Ian, and we look at it and say, okay, this golfer in front of me, I'd love for them to produce 15% more vertical force. They're just not quite where I want them to be in terms of vertical force magnitude and timing. And we give them a drill progression for it, right? And again, we know we can give them the drills that can improve that. They're going to have to work on that, right? It's tough to learn a new movement pattern, to understand how they're going to have to move that body differently. But again, we can do it, right? It takes a lot of effort. I think some of my early studies that actually showed if all you did is just overspeed train, that's it. Just do 6 weeks of overspeed training, and I look at your vertical force production with your driver, pre-training and post-training, your vertical force production went up about 12 to 15%.
Wow.
So I didn't have to actually do this. Okay, you're going to do some of these jump drills. You're going to have to use a force pedal here, some of the force board work that we've done, right? And again, golfers will do that, but I love like the easy button, which is hey, you know what? Take these 3 weighted clubs, swing them as fast as you possibly can. And some of these issues that you're seeing with vertical force, some of the issues you're seeing with timing of rotations is just going to kind of clean itself up. And so I think at the time I thought was cool. And now as I see maybe the struggle for golfers to make those changes without a speed training system, it's really wonderful that it's that easy for them to make those changes. So I think that's like my very biggest one.
Yeah, I think the big breakthrough for me when I went through my own sort of experience and journey with speed training was taking the driver out my hands for a period of time. The golf ball, the task, the numbers, the launch monitor, it was a barrier to me to increase my speed. And I had to go through that process of not having those things. I hear a lot of people online, especially right now, talking about, you don't need overspeed training. You just need your own driver. And I say, that's not my experience in the slightest. My experience is the complete opposite. When you have that intent and you're trying so hard to swing that driver and hit it solid and all these things, I think those are barriers to swinging as fast and as sort of biomechanically sound and sequenced as you could. I think you have to step away from the tee box and I think that's where overspeed training really, really helped me. I was able to drill, and I'm a lifelong caster. And when I looked at my golf swing, when I didn't have a golf ball in front of me, I didn't have a cast motion. So I had to go through that process of developing that sort of neurological gain and that go through that sort of learning experience without having a driver. So I completely push back on those people and can say for firsthand experience, this program and this system absolutely works if you stay true to it.
I mean, it is absolutely a direct relationship. The higher level a player is, the less effective change you're going to see when they're standing over a golf ball. I mean, it's just a reality of how human beings work. And I think another reality of how human beings work is that, our brains are really, really powerful muscles in our body. And when you give somebody a specific goal that doesn't focus on the technical, focuses on a very specific outcome that they're trying to achieve, it's amazing how much change you can see even immediately in the first swing out of the gate. And that's kind of the things that you're tending to see there. Like, yeah, you've been casting all your life when you're standing over a golf ball. You take those first handful of swings, using, with the goal of just, hey, what can I make this radar go up to? It's unbelievable what you see when you go back and look at that. But again, that's kind of that whole idea of looking at of looking at this in a different way, allowing, our bodies to figure out some of these efficiencies that we can use, and then going back and applying it to the skill elements of the sport that we're looking at.
Yeah, and it's cool, Ian, even in some of the progressions that we do with golfers that helped feed the app, right? Because again, if you're wondering, where did these ground reaction force protocols come from? Where did the sequencing protocols come from, right? They came from a lot of data, right? A lot of times where we had a player like you, where we put them on, a lot of times we were using the Smart to Move force plates, get a pre-assessment, they walk through the drills, we see the post-assessment, we see the improvements happen, right? That's how we were confident that these would be things that would really help the vast majority of players that would do them. But man, you very quickly start regressing back to that mean. And that's something I've kind of learned from Mike. I think he does a very wonderful job as a coach in his experience with coaching, understanding what starts to happen when that ball appears and how important it is to groove these repetitions, whether it's the drill, whether it's the overspeed training, introduce the ball at appropriate times, because that is where it matters the most, but do it in a way that you can get those benefits, cycle quickly back to the drills and exercises that are going to help that movement, back to the golf ball, and just get that repped out day after day. And so that can start to transfer to the point that then you show up for a lesson at some point, player hops on my force plates, and all of a sudden I say, hey, you know how we've been working on your lateral force production for the last 6 weeks? You just hopped on and actually did it better than you've ever done it before. And then now you have it to take out to the course.
Again, we spend so much time on understanding what's going wrong and not enough time on understanding how do we get the result we want. I think that's just been a traditional problem with coaching across every genre. In this regard, we're focusing much more on how do we get the result than necessarily exactly why it happened. So it's a big process that I think we've simplified down into a very, very short list of things that you have to do to get to that result. And like I said, I'm excited to see all the results that we're getting now coming in. And all the data that we're getting into the database on the app is really, really awesome to see. We're seeing some big gains so far.
Mike, would you say that that's the value proposition of the app, is people are going to see the framework of what it's going to take to do this, and any sort of hurdles that they come across, the app is going to take that. You guys have experienced that and built that into it. So if you're hitting a bit of a kind of plateau with your speed, that's when we're going to pivot to this next cycle of training and that type of thing. How would you summarize the value proposition?
I think the value proposition is you've essentially got, a team of some of the top coaches in the world on the golf, biomechanics, fitness side, essentially building a program, customized program for you digitally. That's the value proposition. You're getting this entire program that's going to end in a result that you want. As far as exactly how that goes, again, it's not hard. You take a fitness assessment in there that probably takes you 8 to 10 minutes to go through, and then you start to see all the different things that are going to be possible that they're going to offer improvement to your game. And then it's just fitting that into your schedule and working on it, and then tracking your progress in it. And as you track your progress, that starts to help recommend the next things. And it's just, it builds on itself. And I think a lot of people are going to take that and run with it and potentially end up, with better coaches and better trainers and things like that as they start to go down that process over the course with it as well.
Tyler, I think the biggest question with this whole thing, how do we get people to do the work? Because that's all it comes down to. At the end of the day, right? We have these tools and now we have this system. How do we get people to turn up and do the work?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because I'll always tell people, there's a lot of wonderful ways to train our bodies. There's a lot of wonderful ways to train our golf game and our speed. Obviously we have a lot of data to support how beneficial SuperSpeed can be. I always say at the end of the day, it's all about adherence, right? It's all about finding that thing that you can do, that you can show up and do. So I always, Ian, encourage people. I think this is where something measurable makes a big, big difference. Whether that's, the PRGR radar that you can have during your sessions, that you're checking in with your driver, because while it's motivating to say, hey, cool, I set a personal record with my lightest SuperSpeed club, that's great. But where it really matters is, hey, I'm going to hit a driver. Maybe you only have a capacity to do air swings with a driver, great. If you can hit a ball with a driver, even better. But I really encourage golfers to have kind of frequent check-ins with that assessment. This is why we put a speed assessment in the app, where you literally could just go in and say, hey, I've been super speed training for 2 weeks. Is this working? You hop in and you see your driver speed up 3-4 miles an hour. You see maybe your ball speed climb 3-4 miles an hour. That can be incredibly motivating to say, okay, I want to keep doing this, right? I want to keep getting after that. And so I can't stress enough the importance of frequent check-ins with your driver, preferably hitting a golf ball, so you can see those gains and motivate you to keep after it, that kind of day after day.
Yeah, I love that. And within the app, and sort of there's some community element to it as well. There's, we want that competitive nature of, how am I faring relative to other people? And, I think that's something that always drives me is, is there somebody in my playing group, or is there somebody around me that I'm seeing on social media and like, man, it's impressive to see them gaining all that speed. I could really do with a bit of that. I think that's good for us as well, right? That sense of competitiveness.
Yeah, I think some of the big pieces there that we put in, like the leaderboards, where you can customize those to look at the rest of the database and see how you compare to other 4 handicaps or 15 handicaps, and how you compare to other people in your age range and all of that. I think that helps a lot to give people some idea of, kind of what the averages of what people are seeing are. And then, we added in, I don't know, we have probably 50, 60 different like awards and badges that you earn for progress in the app now too. I mean, that's just human nature to want to achieve those type of things. Sure. Once they're there in front of you and it's possible to do it. So we've tried to build in a lot of those just fun aspects into it that make it like a competition among yourself and your friends and everybody else in that SuperSpeed community, just to keep you going with the program and keep you seeing gains in a lot of different areas.
And I would add, Ian, just that idea of measuring as much as possible. Again, you bring up an idea of like, okay, well, I was always an early caster with the club. Well, how powerful would it be for you to just have a simple face-on video of your swing with your iPhone before you start some of these programs, when you're doing the drills, what you do? Maybe you do the lag and wrist mechanics protocols because that's a problem you have. Again, I see this in the physical side as well, right? Like the easy button for physical side is you jump on a scale because you have it and it's easy. And again, that's great. But what if you hop on that scale month after month, nothing's really changing, but you're gaining muscle while losing fat, right? This is where jumps in something like a body fat percentage reading can be really beneficial for you. And so I would just say, like, find as many ways as possible as you can measure where your golf game currently is at. Again, videos of swings are really great. Obviously, scores are good. Speeds are good. How you play with your playing partners, where your distance is with them, what your distance is on a hole, what clubs you're hitting into greens, right? Just take a few minutes to record some information, some videos, those kind of things. Because if you do that, as you start checking in, I think you'll really start to see this concept of, hey, I did make some gains, and this is specifically where I made them.
Mike, you dropped in earlier on the 5.2% gain is the average of a SuperSpeed user. Mm-hmm. Do you have a metric on or sort of some data on what does that lead to in terms of lower scores yet?
Tyler has a good bit of that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I did one, Ian, and this is, I think it's cool when we have these theoretical models that then actually match what we see, even if it's in a small data set, right? So these types of studies are really hard to do, Ian, because what we really want to do is we want to get golfers out on the course. We want to isolate speed training as literally the only variable that's changed. But we need them to do 6 to 8 weeks of speed training. We need the weather to be the same. We need them to play the same golf course. We need them to have the same golf clubs, not switch putters, 6 weeks into the study. which becomes really hard. But I think when you see, really good stuff by like a Mark Brody, where he suggests, we would maybe see X amount of strokes per round per tournament for a professional player. And I think he ended up being somewhere, 15, 20 yards end up saving that player maybe a quarter of a stroke. But he talks about how this idea of with amateur golfers, we would see it be much larger. And he even suggested, I've seen some things where you're talking like these 2 to 3 stroke differences potentially. So again, a very small study that I did, just because again, it's so hard to control all of that stuff, ended up seeing about that same kind of stroke differential, where you ended up about in that 2.5-ish strokes kind of improvement range, some even as much as 3.5. And again, that starts to line up with some of the models that some of these statisticians are putting out there. And so again, I think when you can see that in a small subset of the population, you can feel confident if players go out and grab 15, 20 yards of distance, they stand to create a significant decrease in their handicap.
And you're going to see a lot of that with amateurs too. And I know in that study, you also saw, a reduction in penalty strokes off the tee, a reduction in a lot of those things. So yeah, I mean, there's your tour player who's gaining a slight bit more accuracy and a slight bit more distance, you're going to see a lower score result. Your higher handicaps that are, now all of a sudden not hitting balls out of bounds and getting in the fairways more and getting longer. I mean, there's a big improvement there, I think, overall.
I mean, we're sitting doing this podcast mid-March. We're talking about 6 to 8 weeks is a meaningful amount of time to make a change. I implore, I sort of reach out to anyone who wants to make a big difference to their golf season this year. Do this one thing, right? I don't know if, in fact, I can say this safely. I don't think there's any guarantees with taking lessons. I don't think there's any guarantees with doing really anything in golf. But I've yet to see somebody go through 6 to 8 weeks of speed training, not come out the other side a better golfer. I can truly say that. So, I think if we're talking about an amount of time that is really pretty small amount of time, if you can be committed for 6 to 8 weeks and be true to yourself and turn up for the sessions every sort of other day, this will be probably the most meaningful thing you can do for your game this year.
I got to tell you though, Ian, you got to warn people that, the new app, and, we just released the new Speed Sticks Pro as well, which is, super advanced version of our original system, which is really cool. It's really addictive. You got to be careful. You got to put a warning on the box on this app. You start getting into this app, you start earning a few achievement awards and badges. You start to see, 4, 5, 6 mile an hour gain in club speed. Like, you're going to become a speed training junkie pretty fast. So just make sure people are aware. I don't want to cause any people to get out there and overtrain because it's too much fun.
It's a great caution. I mean, as much as we want to talk about the upside, the other side of it is, we want people to be careful. We want them to be cautious when they're out there and taking care of their bodies. And, nothing can ruin a golf season like an injury. And I think it is a big myth about speed training and injuries that the two go hand in hand. I actually think it's the opposite. From what I've seen, mobility increased on my part. I know if I looked at any of the sort of range of motion, any sort of the rotational elements that I would quantify, I actually ended up with more. But we always have to throw that in there with higher levels of exertion. Of course, comes the risk of injury.
I mean, again, I was half joking there, but at the same time, it is there. Like, one of the questions we answer more than anything else is, man, I'm seeing big results. What do I do? How do I do more? And it's like, well, don't do more speed training. Like, there is a right amount of speed training to put into your program. It is one of the reasons that we added in some of the mechanic stuff and some of the application drills and some of the other stuff in the app, so that we can add on pieces that will be effective for people that want to do a little bit more than that, 10 to 12 minutes 3 times a week.
Well, and it's funny, as Mike was talking about that, and you talk about how beneficial this can be for your gains. I'm thinking of one of the college players on our team who came in as a freshman. He kind of sat at about 157 ball speed. Really phenomenal player. I got to play with him at that speed, and just so good, right? So good. But he knew that speed was holding him back, especially at lower elevation courses and those kind of things. So we did a speed training session, got him some speed. He has a great trainer that he works with on our team. He's done a lot of good stuff. He now is sitting on course right about 170 ball speed.
Wow.
And he just won his 4th of 5 tournaments as a collegiate player. And so you start to talk about how meaningful is, 5, 6, 7 miles an hour of club speed. Man, it is huge. For golfers of really any skill level. Man, there's so much to be had from undertaking something like this.
Amazing. Well, guys, thank you for all your insights. Thank you for your knowledge and what you've sort of done for the golf industry and for golfers out there who we all aspire to play a little bit better. And the research you guys have done, the work you've done developing the app, the products, and the knowledge that you share with people all the time, it leaves a big mark. And ultimately, if we play this game to a higher level, we enjoy it, more, we can compete a little bit better. And so, on behalf of myself and all the Fraser Golf Institute viewers and listeners, really do thank you guys for all your work.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I mean, we love talking shop with Izzy, and we'll do it anytime you want to. So just let us know, and we wish everybody out there some happy trails on the speed training journey.
All right, guys, thank you so much, and guys, thank you for listening. Thank you to those of you who have watching. This has been a phenomenal episode, and I hope there's a little bit of something in there to inspire you guys to go out and start your own speed training journey. Please let us know in the comments below if you have embarked on that, and encourage people that are maybe thinking about it to sort of, what experiences you've had, and we love to hear your own experiences. All right, guys, this has been the Golf Asylum Podcast. Stay tuned next week. We'll see you again soon.